I'm King Kamehameha.
Kamehameha. And today we're here to adumbrate chapters 17 and 18 of the 14th edition of the American Pageant, a textbook all of you, I'm sure, are quite familiar with. Now, to begin, we'd like to address a problem that we've been having with society. Now, Hito, if you may.
Absolutely. We've been increasingly saddened by a lack of transparency in the American government, really repressive government, but we're even more saddened by the fact that America's educational system is crumbling systematically. Every year, thousands of high-achieving students like yourself are confused and befuddled by your lying, cheating textbooks. Now, the Americans claim to be saying that they're supporting real history. The fact of the matter remains that you students know this, and you seek other YouTube channels to find the truth, to find enlightenment. But in the search for other YouTube channels, you're even more confused. And that's why we at Benny Hito will be offering the real facts, the real story, and what really happened in American history. So to start off with, we're going to go over Chapter 17, Manifest Destiny and its Legacy. Benny, would you like to start us off?
I would love to. Now, I'm sure you're quite familiar with the concept of Manifest Destiny, in which the Americans were expected to conquer land from sea to shining sea. And at the time, this seemed like a very positive thing. It allowed for American expansionism. But as we need to look at the past, present, and future, we can see that the long-term effects of Manifest Destiny have had some very serious consequences on history across the globe. And now, while the American Pageant rather, would choose to focus on only American history as it applies to Americans, we take a globalized perspective in today's modern world, and we can see the long-term effects. Now, first, we look at an example of Nanking. Now, Manifest Destiny, and as the Americans applied it, was to conquer all of the land that they thought they deserved. And Japan did exactly the same thing. Now, while across the world, it's been deemed a good thing that Americans came up with the concept of Manifest Destiny, and that we now have everything from the East Coast to California, the world's not quite so happy with what Japan did with it. We think that is horribly unfair. Now, the good people of Japan just wanted to expand their land to what they think they deserved. And that included the city of Nanking in China. Now, much as the Americans went around slaughtering thousands of Indians.
That's very true.
I should say Native Americans, seeing as that we're very politically correct folks here at
Benny Hito, yes.
Native Americans lost their lives so that Americans could conquer their land. And while Japanese did a bit of the same thing, it's completely unfair and undeserving of the treatment that they deserved as a result, wouldn't you say?
I would absolutely agree with that. You see, Manifest Destiny is the idea that the United States can expand its territory across new horizons for its people under the will of a heavenly ruler, God. But what's strange is that it's okay for the United States to slaughter thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of innocent Native Americans, force the Cherokee to march across the Trail of Tears. It's okay for the United States to do all of this. But then, as suddenly when Japan or Italy or Nazi Germany decides to expand their territory, expand their ideals and principles, suddenly we become the bad guys. Now, this is just one of the many glaring examples of how the United States claims to be the guardians of democracy, freedom, and prosperity. But they espouse the very same principles that the bad guys like us do, which I find is a gross misinjustice.
I'd have to agree with you.
Absolutely.
Bureaucracy at its best.
Exactly.
And so today we brought with us a member, King Kamehameha, who claims to be from Hawaii. Who says he's from Hawaii, but as we all very well know, Hawaii is just West Japan. And so he's going to enlighten us with as his first-hand accounts of the times he spent in Nanking and the repercussions associated with it.
Take us away, King Kamehameha. He's crying. He's crying.
It would seem that he doesn't want to
It's too emotional.
relive all of the crime and unfairness that he had to suffer after Nanking.
Yeah, I mean, my people were the ones that instigated it. And I'm still having a little tears over it, but not as much as my tears for the injustices committed by the oppressive American government.
Absolutely.
Well,
now he's crying tears, much like those in the Trail of Tears,
Yes.
in which hundreds of thousands of Jews were forced to go on a long march across the United States, and many of them, 6 gazillion in fact, lost their lives.
Nintendo bless their souls.
Bless their souls. Now, I can actually speak on this further.
It's okay.
Because Americans, those bastards, are trying to take over more of the Hawaiian and Polynesian islands by
So
buying
true.
them out and kicking the natives out of their land. It's just fascism at its best.
It
I
really
do say
is.
so
It
myself.
really is.
Would you agree that the Hawaiians actually want my people, the Japanese, and not those dumb?
Well, specifically,
Repressive.
you mentioned fascism, and as a diehard fascist myself, I think you're absolutely right. What the Americans have done is a true example of communism, which, by the way, is synonymous with fascism. They mean exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
Same with
Exactly.
socialism.
You
Now,
can check up in the history textbooks and internet blogs.
Yes.
They are literally.
but there's no need to do that because you're getting all of your information.
Yeah, there's no need to.
Yeah,
Don't waste your
us.
time. Just
Sponsored by ramen.
it's a good Japanese stuff, man.
Japanese,
Japanese,
not American.
Not American.
Japanese. So, now that we've gone over King Kamehameha's explication of his first-hand accounts at non-king, now let's go over to the chronology of what exactly happened right now. So, Chapter 17 starts in 1837 with the Canadian Rebellion.
Quite so.
And
quite
as
so.
we all know, in 1776, when America seceded from the British Empire, America also obtained holdings in Canada.
That's true.
But the Canadians, you know, they just didn't tolerate this American injustice.
Why
wanted-
didn't they tolerate it?
Well, I mean, the Americans rebelled for freedom. Yet when they took control of Canada, they imposed tax rates of 69%, and 420% of territorial holdings by Canadian landowners were subsequently held over to the United States. So, I mean, clearly you can see why the Canadians wanted to rebel. Thus, the Canadian Rebellion of 1837, which, by the way, successfully, you know, thank God,
Thank
resulted
God.
in Canadian victory, and that is why we enjoy the Canada we all know and love today.
But it was a horrible atrocity.
really
Wouldn't you
was.
say more than 9,000 Canadians died?
Yes.
More than 9,000.
More than
9,003, in fact.
Yes.
Now, not only this, we can see the long-term lasting social effects of the Canadian Rebellion are here to this day. Now, when we look at the Libyan Civil War in 2016, we can see that the same idea of American expansionism has come across Libyan borders again. Now, we all know that Canada is a part of the Libyan province of Africa. And as we look at today's example of Libya, we can see that the Americans, when they conquered Libya in 1972, they took with them communism. And that's why, to this day, the people of Libya have been enslaved by white people in their homelands. And I'm not going to tell you to check your privilege, but you need to check your privilege if you're watching this right now. Now, if you're white and male, you may qualify for membership at the patriarchy. And I really suggest that you take a moment to look at yourself from a third-person perspective.
And you know, on the topic of privilege, I think it's a really good time to talk about yet another injustice committed by the American system. The shooting of Michael Brown. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I think that the American people are at fault here.
King Kamehameha, would you like to explain to our viewers what the Ferguson incident exactly was?
The Ferguson incident was nothing to joke about, actually.
Absolutely.
It was really just the epitome of all the problems, the societal problems in America. Now, whether you think it was the police's fault or not, it's still a problem that we have to change in America.
Excuse me. You mentioned the police, but how are they at all involved in the Trayvon Martin incident of last
The
month?
Trayvon? I thought we were talking about the Michael
We're
Brown.
talking about the Trayvon Martin.
We're talking about the Trayvon Martin case.
Wait, no, we were talking about the Ferguson incident.
That is the Trayvon Martin case.
Of course.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
for some kind of unprofessional, lawless, unfactual
Well,
YouTube
seeing
channel.
as though that the Mexican, what's his name? The shooter's name?
Trayvon Martin.
Trayvon Martin, or are we talking about the white man? Check your privilege,
Check
white
your
people.
Check your privilege.
Are we talking about the white man?
Yes, the white man.
That I believe his name is Darren Cracker Wilson.
Darren Cracker Wilson, indeed.
Yes.
Yes, I read that on Huffington Post.
Huffing.
Also on Slate.com, which,
Yes.
by the way, is a very,
That's
very
a
reputable
wonderful
source. You know, New York Times, too liberal. Fox
Wait.
News, yeah, I mean, kind of. We'll
We'll
allow
accept
it.
Those
it. We'll
leftists at
accept
Fox, you know, I can't believe a word.
Yeah,
they
Fox
say.
News loves
Yeah.
Obama too much. That
True.
kind of political bias should just not be allowed.
Can't be allowed.
Yeah.
Yet another American
Fox
injustice.
News, if you're watching this video right now, we strongly suggest that you check your privilege.
Strongly.
Strong.
But back to the original case of pseudo Trayvon Martin and his shooter Darren Wilson. Can you just lay down some background information of what exactly happened?
Well, see, the thing is, a white man thought he had all the power in the world. What was his name again?
Darren Cracker Wilson.
Darren Cracker Wilson.
Darren Cracker Wilson. Thought he had all the power in the world, and he shot up some other people of a different race. That's the problem within this country.
Yes, and much as that's a problem within our country, we can see that it's a problem in other countries, such as Africa. Now, within Africa, the country of Rhodesia still lives to this day. And in their African Bush War, in which they took second place, we can see that they were oppressed by the native African peoples. Now, the Rhodesian settlers just wanted a colony of their own, free of rule from outside interference. And that's why they were brutally slaughtered by hundreds of thousands of Africans. And so we can see that the Africans could be at fault there. And likewise, they're at fault in the Trayvon Martin incident of just last month. Now, I'm not saying it has anything to do with their race, but what's more important is that in both incidents, the Africans had no fault in the final decision. Now, as much as the Rhodesian people got off easy for losing the Bush War, they only took second place, I remind you. Now, likewise, Trayvon Martin took second place, and that's still pretty good. He's on the podium. I wouldn't be complaining if I were him or anyone dissatisfied with the results of the last jury's decision.
Indeed. Let's just take an in-depth analysis of this. And this really correlates closely to the Canadian Rebellion and Manifest Destiny, for reasons we'll explain later. The jury decision was composed of 12 individuals, 9 whites, 3 blacks. And they all voted in favor of no indictment due to the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. But I think if there's one important thing we've learned about Ferguson incident, it's that people keep on rioting, keep on burning stores, ruining property, because that just totally legitimizes the entire message espoused by the entire incident, right? I mean, all these stores that were of these families' livelihoods, burn them down. Who cares? They're just small fragments of this American society. If we want to prove our message, we must use it with our fists. I mean, only riots can possibly solve all our problems.
Now, even if you live 3 time zones and 2,000 miles away from Ferguson, we remind you that everyone in your city who's a shopkeeper or is white is at fault for the Ferguson shooting. Now, we'd like to gently remind you to stay safe out there while you're looting, rioting, and committing murder, especially on policemen. We all know how that's going to go. Now, take care as you riot, loot, and murder. And with that, we move on to the United States' annexation of Texas just last year. Now, in the year 1845, only 6 months ago, the United States decided to annex Texas. And this is only because of the rich history of hatred of slavery within Texas. Now, the people of Texas did not want anything to do with slavery. And with Barack Obama's election in 2011, we can see that his desire for slavery across the entirety of the United States is what drove this United States' annexation of Texas.
Indeed. But before we go into that, let's look at the background of Texas.
You're absolutely right.
Texas was once known as the One Star Republic, also known as the Lone Star Republic. And the reason why it was called that was because before, Texas was under the control of the Mexicans, but they wanted to be under American autonomy, which is surprising because America is such a repressive nation. Why would you ever want to be under their control? But I mean, that fact withstanding, you don't want to be under America, but the United States didn't want them. And so they proclaimed themselves a republic independent of the United States and of Mexico.
Much like communist Russia.
Yes. When America tried to invade communist Russia.
Yes.
Through the Alaska holdings, because Alaska is actually only 1 mile away from Russia. So when Sarah Palin said, "I could see Russia from my window," she actually meant it. That's not satire. She really could see. I mean, you could totally see something from a mile away, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Especially 1 mile away. But the Americans capitalized on this Alaska bridge, which 10,000 years before was actually a completely solid land bridge. they capitalized on this and they invaded Russia. But due to the Russia's winter tactic, there have been rarely any historical ventures where people invaded Russia in the winter and never, came out alive, let alone succeeded. America was beaten back, and it had to plan its next invasion of Russia in the 2012 elections under President Obama. But with that withstanding, Texas wanted to be free, but it wanted to be under America's control, but America didn't want that. Thus, it became the Lone Star Republic.
Indeed.
But soon, Mexico developed a superweapon, and this superweapon would soon revolutionize war. And it's basically comprised of shooting out the avocados that are deathly allergic to the natives of Texas. And by doing so, the death rate was approximately 420%. That's more than 320% guaranteed death rate. Andrew Chow, King Kamehameha.
Well, King Kamehameha, I think, is still in distress over all of the atrocities committed against his people after Nanking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
let's first actually look to what led to the annexation of Texas. What led to it was actually the Webster-Ashburn Treaty.
Really?
Now, for those of you who don't know what the treaty is, it was actually between the creator, Daniel Webster, of the Webster Dictionary, and creator of the Ashburn Dictionary, Mexican Ashburn. Now, see,
I know him.
I know him.
I have his autograph.
Daniel Webster was an American.
Yeah.
Mexican Ashburn was
that is pretty
a
sick.
Mexican.
That's pretty sick.
Look at that. You can totally see it, right?
Pretty neat.
They went at war, and following that, because Daniel Webster so evilly took over the dictionary companies,
A monopoly. Much like the board game.
Yes, much like the
Very
board
similar.
game. Took over the entire thing and just shut out Mexican Ashburn from this whole corporation.
And you know what's
And
really
that's what
interesting?
really pissed them off.
What's really interesting is that Mexican Ashburn is actually the father of the boy band One Direction.
Is that so?
That is actually very true. If you Wikipedia right now, Mexican Ashburn, that's spelled 420BLAZEIT-69. You can actually find that on their Wikipedia page.
This is true.
Yeah, it's completely unedited. It's complete truth.
Now, you mentioned the super weapon that the Mexicans came into possession of.
Yes.
And upon the United States' realization that Mexico was in possession of a WMD, they decided to launch a full-on invasion of all of Mexico, including the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in Mexico's southernmost province.
Yes.
Now, the United States annexation of Texas lasted over 17 days. That's right, 17 days. 24 hours for every day.
That's 24 times 17, which approximately is 103,572.5.
That's a lot of minutes.
0.5.
That is a large number of minutes. But my point, minutes aside, is that the United States' annexation of Texas was a further negative impact of the idea of manifest destiny. Now, while it led to things like the Holocaust and communism and Nanking and the repercussions that the Japanese people had to suffer as a result of it, manifest destiny was also harmful to the good people of Texas and the Lone Star Republic. Now, these people suffered heavy losses due to the droppings of the atomic bombs 3 and 4, Little Boy and Fat Boy. Now, when both of these atomic bombs were dropped on the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo,
Never forget.
Never forget.
Never.
Moment of silence.
Right. Now, the moment of silence.
Longer.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I think we have to end
We
this
have
video.
been a hero. It's time to end. We're sorry. Good night, everybody.